entitled with more entitlements to build their toxic-causing centers that threaten our community health, value, and morale. Already, I'm hearing of planning commissioners smiling on the idea of putting truck stops on Sandalwood and at Singleton Road, Calimesa Boulevard that bring pollution and crime. We deserve sensible, sensitive planning together to retain our naturally great community. Yesterday and today, let's get back to the plan for all of our tomorrows. City Council, join us. Be Calimesa strong. And I respectfully request meetings with each of you to discuss this, a region in crisis, so that we can work together for the good of everyone in Calimesa.
Thank you for your time. Guys, you know, it's nice to clap and everything else. We aren't here to clap. This isn't a circus. I make it into a circus sometimes, I'll grant you that. But, you know, this is a meeting. Let's conduct a meeting. Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Hello, everybody. James Wright. Residents of Rancho Calimesa experienced the third planned warehouse electrical power outage yesterday, 2/2/23, and a fourth outage planned for 2/9/23 to upgrade the power grid infrastructure needed for warehouse operations. A senior Southern California Edison company representative told me that these upgrades are essential to future warehouse operations. The new city manager, Will Colo, stated on the record at the December 19th, 2023 City Council meeting, nothing has been decided. No decisions are imminent regarding the future of the Oak Valley North Project warehouses. If that is the case, why is Southern California Edison going forward with pre-anticipated work on the electrical power grid? When I called the city on 2/2/23, the city was unaware of the outage at Rancho Calimesa, which went on from 8 a.m. to 7:25 p.m., leaving the park blacked out with our residents in the cold and vulnerable to falling in the dark or criminal activity due to the work upgrading the grid. I want the city of Calimesa, the mayor, the city council members to show the residents of Rancho Calimesa and Sharondale now that unequivocally, without a doubt, no decisions have been made about the Oak Valley North Project warehouses, and to explain and answer residents' questions about exactly what's going on. There are residents in Rancho Calimesa who still don't trust the city of Calimesa. It is thought that the warehouse development is more important to the city than their health, safety, and welfare and future quality of life. They think that they and their families do not count and allege the city is just pretending there is no decision, but really is development friendly. And because there's been a lot of preliminary work done to get to this point, and therefore are committed to the approval of the warehouse projects. In my response to the notice of preparation of the draft environmental impact report addressing to the Riverside Board of Supervisors, I explained that technically each diesel truck with the trailer inbound to the warehouse is the project. With its context and the toxic pollution generated by the project, it is environmental and detrimental to the residents of Rancho Calimesa and Sharondale, to their health, safety, and welfare and future quality of life. These residents are against the Oak Valley North Project warehouses and all of the known adverse impacts associated with this project. Instead, they want the city of Calimesa to allow, through sensitive planning, use to provide for its residents, young and old, who want clean air, health, and safety, and the beauty of the Creator and the peace that that brings. Thank you.
Thank you. I was serious about that, and I could run everybody out of here. You know, let's just keep on going with the meeting. And Mr. Wright, I just want to tell you the line outages are for, no, go ahead. There's no question here. The line outages are just to put re-insulated conductor up there to keep the fire danger down. That's all that's about.
Well, then why would it?
That's it.
Well, that's not what I was told.
Well, been working for Edison since '52. I was raised by him, then I do know what's going on.
And I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Consent calendar. Or we want to approve the agenda first and see what's going to happen?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar, is there anything there anybody wants to pull? If not, can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve consent calendar items 1 through 7.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, police chief, it's comments and reports. Mr. Salas, you're up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Captain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This report is from the 17th of January to the 5th, and during that time, we had a total of 417 calls for service. 38 of those were traffic related. We had 11 burglaries, 5 thefts, misdemeanor thefts, and 3 felony thefts. We did have 3 mail thefts and 2 unattended deaths, and we've had a stolen vehicle and 1 recovered stolen vehicle. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
You guys have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Captain. Fire chief, comments and reports.
Evening, Mayor, members of the council. This report goes back to January 30th. Year to date, we've run 194 total calls for service, 133 medical aids, 2 fires, 6 mutual aid responses to our neighbors. We've received 1 mutual aid response, and of those 6 that we asked for, we canceled them 3 times. 48 miscellaneous calls for service. Had a couple of significant incidents, residential structure fire that we responded to assist the city of Yucaipa. We experienced a 6-car traffic collision, eastbound 10, between Singleton and Calimesa Boulevard, several transported, and we had a fatal traffic collision on I-10 eastbound west of Calimesa Boulevard. I'd like to talk to council tonight and to the public, remind them that we will be stepping up. Our first round of weed abatement will be kicking off in the next several weeks. Take a look at the nice green mountains, all that green grass. Seems like we have a bumper crop. Don't be surprised if the fire department contacts property owners more than once this year. I think it's going to keep growing until, well into July. On that note, the fire department was contacted by the Office of the State Fire Marshal regarding some remapping for the state responsibility area, specifically in regards to the high fire hazard severity zone mapping. That's currently underway and been open for public comment. The public can look at the website of the Office of the State Fire Marshal for the fire hazard severity zone mapping. I would suggest that people living on the edge of the what we refer to as the WUI, on any properties that butt up to the state responsibility area, take a look at that and provide public comment that has been extended until April 4th, 2023. And folks can look at https / Office of State Fire Marshal, osfm.fire.ca.gov, FHSZ. And subsequent to your questions, that's the end of my report.
Chief, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is that general area that you're talking about?
The city of Calimesa proper, at the base of the San Gorgonio foothills, into the foothill areas, into the edges of the unincorporated Riverside County on the east end, out into the Badlands. Everything that we're surrounded by is state responsibility area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. Mayor and council members reporting on county and regional meetings. John, you have anything?
I was not required to attend any meetings.
All right. Very good. about you?
I got a list.
I know you do.
All information for our city. On January 23rd, I attended the RCTC Budget and Implementation Committee where they discussed fiscal mid-year budget amendments and the election of officers. On the 26th of January, I attended the RTA Executive Committee, which is usually pre-board meeting, a pre-board meeting. The 26th was the board meeting where the board of directors recognized the outgoing chair, Zach Swank. He's from Temecula. RTA also purchased 6 trucks, approved bus passes to IEHP members where RTA is reimbursed. On February 1st, RTA Budget and Finance Committee was held. Cash flow projections and quarterly investment reports were given. And then the most lengthy of my report is on February 2nd and 3rd. As a representative of the city at RCTC, I attended the 2-day annual workshop in Palm Springs. At that meeting, if you're not familiar with RCTC, Riverside County Transportation Commission, RTA is Riverside Transit Agency. Correct me when I use acronyms and don't explain. But RCTC is the entity that decides how money is spent on development of bridges, roads, projects, infrastructure projects, and cities apply and get money back. It's funded many levels, county, state, federal. It's a little confusing. And so these 2 days, every 2 years we have new council persons, and so every 2 years people have to be reminded just how things are done, how money is spent, what monies can be used for what projects. It's all very specific. And at this meeting, they had 2 presenters. One was from General Motors. Everyone is talking about the electric vehicles. I was lucky to test drive a Hummer. It was all electric. It was like driving a rocket. It was fantastic. But it's $150,000. Who can afford that? But it's food for thought. Where are we going to get the batteries? Where are we going to store them? How are we going to dispose of them? It's a big issue that's facing all cities across the state. There was also, let's see, information on a traffic relief plan. We all know what traffic is like through the past cities. We're the entrance to the past cities. And our freeway cannot be expanded. It's just too small. It's unaffordable to expand the freeway. So all cities are working together to come up with a regional plan on how to deal with congestion, bottlenecks that involves buses, trains, planes, you name it. All cities are working on trying to come up with solutions because I don't know if most people know, but before you can have any road corrections or enlargements, you have to build cities. And it's kind of backwards. And so if it were the other way around, cities would have to pay up front and maybe not get paid back. So it's a very complicated matter, but people think, it's done on purpose. It isn't. It's just the way cities are grown. But RCTC was put together by the state in 1976 and expanded in 1998. There are currently 81 staff, 33 elected representatives, and 5 supervisors. And the governor has a representative, which is Caltrans. And that's it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, you have anything?
Yes, I attended 2 regional meetings, the RCA, Regional Conservation Authority meeting, and then I filled in for Council member Hewitt, who was ill and couldn't attend WRCOG. I'll give you a brief update of each one of those. At RCA, we just approved some minor modifications to the MSHCP mitigation fee handbook. That's a mouthful. Multiple species habitat conservation plan, for those of you who don't know, MSHCP. Just to make it current and some minor updates to the language and clear it up. Nothing substantive. We also got a very nice presentation on the possibility of another poppy super bloom this year. It's kind of interesting thought. If those of you remember back in 2019, we had that really cool super bloom with California poppies. Well, the RCA is anticipating a possible another super bloom because of all of the rain, obviously, we've gotten this year. And so it could be quite beautiful. We'll see, though. I can't take your question, but maybe the mayor will later. And then Yeah, so they're worried about people going out and maybe trampling on RCA land, and so they're kind of preparing, being proactive about protecting the lands in anticipation of that. And then we just had a closed session about some potential land acquisitions for some conservation land. And then briefly for WRCOG, it's another big acronym, but basically it's the Western Riverside Council of Governments. There we go. In our Western Riverside County region. We had a very long, that was a very painful meeting actually. Half of it was in a closed session. Can't say much about that other than we discussed this was on the agenda, so I could say this, but just a classified compensation study, and then some litigation issues. And then we had a very long, drawn-out conversation about the Brown Act related to teleconferencing and how that remote meeting, which I won't bore you with that decision, but basically it's time to come back to normal meetings and stop telecommuting, was the outcome of that. And then finally, we mentioned that they're taking nominations for community service awards for those who are members of our region, who have done things of note for Western Riverside County. Nominations are being accepted now through March, and anyone who is not an elected public official can be nominated. So that concludes my report, Mayor.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks for making Wendy's thing. You had that was a tight schedule.
That was a very tight schedule.
The only thing I've got to say is, I think it is Friday, you're having a meet and greet at the Royale, the sheriff is that right? So anybody that wants to talk to the sheriff or anything like that, I don't know what time it's starting, do you know?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock at the Royale, and there'll be several officers there and everything else if you want to.
We're also going to have the firefighters there.
And the firefighters too. So,
Open forum, just come in and stop by. Any concerns, we'll be there. Coffee, steel coffee with the cop, but coffee with cop and a fire.
yeah,
We'll be happy to have anybody come on. Yeah.
okay. And, okay, I want to open number 8 public hearing on Oak Valley Town Center. Does staff have, who's talking on that?
Yes, Mike Thornton, our city engineer, will be giving a brief staff report on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, residents. In November of 2020, Council approved tentative parcel map 37862 for the Oak Valley Town Center. Tonight we are bringing before you changes to the conditions of approval that were presented and approved back at that date. They are related to easement recordation, commercial association bylaws, and TUMF credit agreements. It allows more flexibility for the project to move forward while those items remain undone. Also tonight we are asking Council to approve CC&Rs for site operations. Those have been reviewed by City Legal Counsel and approved and ready for Council approval. Finally, we are asking Council to approve map recordation tonight, along with a subdivision agreement and bonds. Those bonds are to ensure that public improvements, including street, drainage, traffic signal, landscaping, and survey monuments, are installed. With that, that concludes my presentation.
And just one point of clarification on those bonds, those are performance bonds that are purchased by the developer, that are done on behalf of the city by the developer to ensure those are done. Those are not like municipal bonds, so I just want to make that clarification.
Okay, I know the applicant is here. Does he want to offer anything else, or you want to sit tight for a while? Okay. Okay, I will go to public comment or testimony. John Gates.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Just
Maybe
well,
I got
yeah.
time hearing. Anyway, Good evening, Mayor Davis and fellow council members, and the people that keep us safe and out of harm, okay? Enough is enough. The proposed Oak Valley North expansion Bircher warehouse development not only crosses the freeway, it crosses the line. The mission, vision, and value statements, as stated in the Calimesa's website, is as follows, and I quote, mission, to preserve and enhance the open space, I repeat, open space, atmosphere, and quality of life in Calimesa. The vision, the city of Calimesa is dedicated to remaining a community that honors its beautiful natural setting through open space, preservation, wildlife corridors, and extensive trail systems, as well as enriching the quality of life for Calimesa through sensitive planning and creates increased business activity, local jobs, new parks, and schools. Values, the city of Calimesa incorporated December of 1990. It has developed its own unique zoning codes and standards and sought to retain the open space characteristics. The city's general plan provides for neighborhoods and businesses that reflect that concept. The city is governed by a 5-member city council and form of government small enough to respond to citizens' concerns, yet experienced enough to maintain the unique Calimesa lifestyle. In the coming weeks and months, Calimesa residents from JP Ranch, Singleton Heights, Summer Wind, Sharondale, where I reside, will voice their opposition and disappointment of adding more warehouses and thousands of trucks and health issues to our beautiful, beautiful community. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, John.
Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's talking about another project, not this particular project.
Yeah, he is talking about another project, and I didn't, really want to.
Yes, we didn't want to interrupt you at all, because those were comments that were similar to the earlier comments.
There's no connection between the town center and
No
That's
problem.
okay. No worries. We certainly understand the confusion. So.
Yeah, it's, somebody decided to use that name, and it's sort of got legs. So, okay, Ms. Delaney.
Mayor and city council members, staff. So I'm new here. Some of you are new too. And I'm learning tonight. I don't know anything about what's being amended. I don't really understand TUMP and even CCNR. So I'm learning, and I never want to come to a city council meeting again without having the knowledge and having studied what's being discussed and voted on. So if there would be city council members, several of you, that would meet with me to educate me and to share that anytime there are amendments to any general or specific plan, to zoning ordinance, and even about the residential infill priority area overlay zone, to help me understand what you will be considering and voting on from now on, because I need some help. I'm new and don't understand everything. This is important for me and many people I know. That's just a request, if you would please do that, and I can call you like once a month, or, so that you can let me know if I can meet with you. I know that Mayor Davis is very busy. He has a business, he has a family, and he's also the mayor. So if anyone else would like to meet with me and just help me out, it would be very helpful.
Mr. Barrow? Or, I want to get that all wrong. I know that. Go ahead.
Yes, so I think a lot of those questions are probably more appropriate to staff because we have the expertise on those things. I think that if you do ask council, they'll probably defer to us anyway. So, Kelly, Mike, any of our staff would be happy to meet with you on any of those issues. Absolutely.
Thank you. So, council, after I meet with staff and have what they've told me, and then I go study it, I would be willing to meet with you to help you be fully educated, because I have learned that not everyone reads the agenda packet, because they don't like to read always. But I would be happy, I'm sure that some of you do, I would be happy to go over what I learned from staff and also have studied, and maybe I've talked to other experts as well. So thank you.
To correct something there, I said I don't read it all. I do read it. You know, and it's.
I didn't say all,
I know, but you said
the packet.
These people here, they all read the packet. I read the packet, but we don't read every word of it.
If I was making the decisions in city council for the residents I serve, we the people, I would read it all.
Okay, well, we have an understanding of what is happening, and we, like you, have to ask questions, which we ask
Right.
staff, and they answer our questions. So,
Yes.
Thank you.
After you've read it all.
Okay. I am going to close the public testimony at this time. That's done. Council discussion. Is there? Jeff?
I just think it might be worthwhile, if it's appropriate, for the city attorney and see if it's appropriate to make a distinction here between the projects that keep getting confused maybe in the community. I know we're talking here on the agenda about the Oak Valley Town Center project, but there's some confusion, I know, with the Oak Valley.
North, yeah, north.
And
yeah.
so, can we make that distinction?
Yeah.
Appropriate. I think the city manager can handle that.
Yeah, so the Oak Valley Town Center is the project that's west of the 10 freeway. So if you're heading south, or excuse me, east, it's always confusing, east on the I-10, it'll be on the right side of the freeway. This is part of the Summerwind specific plan. That's the project that is being considered with this item. Oak Valley North is the proposed name for the project on the other side of I-10 at the southeast corner of Singleton and Calimesa Boulevard. That's the one that we received the application in late December. There was a comment period, or there was a scoping meeting regarding the environmental impact report that's currently being prepared. So like I had said previously, that is a project that is in the very early stages of being considered. And so I said it before on, I think, December 19th, as I was quoted as saying that the decision is not imminent, and that is true, because there's still a lot that has to be done with that one. But for this particular item, we're talking about the Oak Valley Town Center, which is the commercial industrial development in Summerwind, which has already been previously approved.
You got anything, Linda?
I just wanted to say, it was a lot of reading, like this much, but this is all developer information that they're going to provide us information on how they're going to run the project. And so one thing that I liked that I saw in here was a lot of protection for our community. Times of delivering materials, doing grading, work hours, and so on. So that we're making sure that the developer meets those needs. We have it in writing. And this whole section here is on how they're going to do that for us. So feel assured that we're going to protect our residents from undue noise and travel and so on. And that's one thing that I was happy to read in this lengthy report, but very well put together report. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything, John, or would you like to make a motion?
I just want to kind of point out, I appreciate the distinction between the two projects. So looking at this and talking to staff, these are just very minor modifications that have to be made as far as for the project to move along in its natural stages. So there's nothing in here that's changing what's already been underway. It's just minor modifications, allow things to continue to move forward as they were essentially designed. So there's nothing in here that stands out to me as like a concern or anything that I felt that needed to be addressed. So I don't have any specific concerns at all about what we're approving.
Okay, do you want to make a motion then?
Sure, yeah. I'll make a motion to adopt the staff's recommendation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing number 9. Who's getting that one?
I will be giving that one. So good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This item is to consider authorizing the California Statewide Community Development Authority to conduct special assessment proceedings on behalf of the Ucaipa Valley Water District. So this basically allows the developers associated with Summerwind and Mesa Verde to access tax-exempt financing for improvements that are required to be made as part of their development. In this case, is for sewer lines and sewer infrastructure that is needed for the projects. So public infrastructure qualifies for this type of funding. And so the city has no obligation under this financing. It just has to conduct the hearing. To allow for public testimony to be made, it's just part of the process. But the city of Calimesa has no obligation on these bonds. There's going to be nothing on our books. This is just to conduct the hearing on behalf of Ucaipa Valley Water District and the developers so that they can make those public improvements. That concludes my report.
Thank you. I know the applicant is here. I don't know if they want to sit here or they want to wait and see what's going on. Okay. Public testimony. Ms. Delaney.
Yes. No comment. Thank you, City Manager, for making that, sir.
Okay. I'm going to close the public testimony and close the public hearing. And is there any discussion by you guys?
I have no questions, Mayor.
Want to get a motion?
I'll move to approve the staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 10, public hearing, street. Go ahead. Who's handling that, Will?
That'll be Mike Thornton, our city engineer.
So good evening again, council. This is going to be a very brief item. For those who know where West Avenue L is, we are on the far west end of West Avenue L where the road terminates. And there's a portion of public right-of-way that wasn't really intended to be public right-of-way that ended up as public right-of-way. There are private improvements that have been constructed within that public right-of-way, and it is not needed for future circulation in accordance with our circulation plan in our general plan. That said, we did take this item to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission found that it was consistent with the general plan and recommended approval tonight with the City Council. That concludes my report.
Okay. Is there anybody representing that piece of property or any discussion there? Do you have anything to say? But you gotta,
We found it out on the title report for decades and decades.
you have to come up here.
I'm Michelle Brittingham, the Realtor. The owners are in another state, and they had that property for decades and decades, and when Iowa Avenue was vacated, it intersected with the end of West Avenue L. When it vacated that little section that overlapped, it was misunderstood where it was vacated. So they have private improvements on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we don't have anybody from the public, so I will close the public testimony and close the public hearing. Any discussion from the council? motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Okay, item number 12. Who gets that?
I think we're on item 11 on that, yeah.
I can't even skip another hearing. Public hearing number 11. Who's going to handle that?
That will be Brendan Kearns, our Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Great to be here today. And so we're looking at is a new ordinance for your consideration that is going to be implementing a very significant recent state housing law, Senate Bill 9, which is called the California Housing Opportunity and More Efficiency Act. And this law is the latest kind of step in this path towards gentle density, is the phrase that's used. So accessory dwelling units, which on occasion have come before council, is one aspect of that. The density bonus laws are another. And this is kind of the next step in that. It's a complicated law, and this presentation attempts to make it accessible but not oversimplify, right? And kind of talk about what the state law requires and how at the local level we're going to try to implement it while still looking after Calimesa's local health, safety, and interests. So it took effect just over a year ago, and again, the goal is gentle density. Very important here, it's limited to single-family zones. And what it does is it streamlines the approval process for two types of approvals. One is SB 9 duplex units, the other is urban lot splits. Now you'll note I use sort of these quotes around duplex. It's not necessarily what we think of as two attached units, but it's a phrase that's commonly thrown around. I'll explain more further. And a key thing to think about here is that what does it mean to ministerially approve a project? That's the general thrust here. The key idea is to eliminate discretion so that the city has to approve these looking solely at the objective standards under state law and additional objective standards that the city is allowed to apply. And we're talking about objective. We're looking at independently verifiable standards, something you or I or anyone else can independently verify. X number of heights high, feet high, how long, and so forth. When we're looking at something ministerially, we can't consider aesthetics, neighborhood character, or other things that are subjective. And if it satisfies these standards, there can be no hearing, and the city is not authorized to impose conditions of approval that reflect an exercise of discretion. Something like the applicant shall provide something to the satisfaction of the community development director, things of that sort. So one of these ministerial approvals, again, is for these duplex projects. And it's just two residential units that meet certain standards on a single parcel. And what can happen is that can be approved, and with existing state ADU laws, you could look at up to 4 units on a single parcel. So we lose a lot of our authority over these types of projects, but we can, of course, still impose objective zoning, subdivision, design review standards with an important limitation. Whatever we impose, we need to be able to allow the development of 2 units that are at least 800 square feet. So if any of our objective standards preclude that type of a project, we can't apply them. Urban lot splits. So this is the other type of approval that SB 9 addresses. And what it does is it requires, again, this ministerial approval process for a parcel map. They'll basically divide up a parcel, and the resulting parcels have to be roughly equal in size, and each parcel must be at least 1,200 square feet. Parking. Generally, the city will require one parking spot for each of these newly created units. However, no parking can be required if it's near certain public transit, car share, other locations where the state's made the determination that parking is less needed. So an important part of this is also to consider that not every single family zoned parcel will be subject to this law. And I've highlighted a few types of properties where SB 9 will not apply. And a few that are worth honing in on here. First, you'll see very high fire hazard severity zones. Now that would be some significant parts of Calimesa. But you'll notice the italicized, highlighted section there with limitations. So in the law, it says that generally these fire zones will not allow SB 9 projects unless certain fire hazard mitigation requirements have been met, so on and so forth. I will say that thus far the state has taken a very broad reading of those limitations, so it's not clear at this point how significant this exception will be, but there's an ongoing debate on that issue. But needless to say, not every fire zone will be exempt from SB 9. Another one here is this habitat for protected species. And the group may recall about a year ago, this made international news, which is not that common for local land use, because of this majestic beast. The mountain lions in Woodside, California, recently got special protections. The town there declared itself mountain lion habitat and said that so we can have no SB 9 in the entire town. This was a brief development. The Attorney General took an interest, and he determined that this was contrary to law. He sent a stern letter, and Woodside quickly reversed course. But what we are seeing is that in some jurisdictions, they get rather aggressive in their efforts to regulate the development of SB 9 projects. And we've learned that the Attorney General's office and state HCD is really carefully scrutinizing these types of projects. So the team that's been working on this for the city has really worked to carefully craft something that looks after the city's interests while respecting the goals of the state legislation. So while we have modest discretion, the city still has the ability to deny SB 9 projects if the building official makes written findings that there would be a specific adverse impact upon health and safety or the physical environment, and there's no way to mitigate or avoid that impact. In practice, we found that's a very high threshold to meet, and we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. But it is out there. So our draft ordinance is largely implementing the state law. The state law has these different requirements, procedures, processes that cities have to follow. In addition, we have adopted some local standards that are meant to address local concerns, ensuring pedestrian access, concealment of certain electrical equipment, and so forth. But the meat of the ordinance is in the implementation of state law. And that is it, unless there's any questions.
I know the other thing that I didn't see up there is they have a stipulation that they can't be used for short-term rentals.
That is correct, yes. That's one of the requirements.
Something that out towards the desert they really like for the events.
Yes, and we would require there to be a covenant on the property to ensure it's not used for short-term rental.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I just want to make a comment. Last year, This law is dated, went into effect the 1st of 2022. And our city, Calimesa, as well as many cities in California, tried to fight this bill, and we lost. And so we are now protecting ourselves by doing what we can to keep as much control of our city and land use here as possible. So just want to let you know we did fight it. Many cities fought it and lost. Thank you.
I think I just want to reiterate that too, because I think a lot of people have come up to me thinking this is like our idea. I'm like, no, this is absolutely not our idea. This is coming down from the state, and we're trying to do the best that we can within, to obey the law that the state has mandated that we follow. And so that's very important for the public to know. This is not something that we wish for our city or even want, but we are doing our due diligence to follow the law, the letter of the law here, as best we can. And I really admire Woodside's approach with the mountain lion. Man, I was trying to think of some sweeping ordinance, you know, that would just push SB 9 away, but it sounds like they're not going to accept any sweeping ordinances to circumvent SB 9. We got to deal with those on a case-by-case basis, as you said.
Yeah,
and, go ahead.
Council member, I would say that the smiling face would probably turn
Yeah,
into a frown.
yeah,
if
that's
you
right. That's right.
go down that
That
path,
smiling
so.
face would send me a very nasty letter.
Most likely.
Yes. And so I appreciate you, your presentation, and you making it very clear to us what we should do and what we need to do. And so that's all, Mayor. I would recommend, if there's no further comment. Yeah.
Just real quick. So I agree with kind of everything that's been said. The only thing I'll add, because that was kind of my question, is what flexibility do we have and still work within the law? So just kind of after trying to work through that, I think they've done everything that they can, the staff, to follow the law, but also improve the standard to the best of their ability and still work within that law. And also the big thing to point out is even if we approve this ordinance, we can always amend it. So if we find other ways to work within this law later, we can amend it and try to, as things move along, since it's only been in place for like a year, a lot is still being learned, so we can modify it and adjust it if it need be later as well. So that's it.
Absolutely. There was actually, sorry, Mayor, one more point. John and I were at a conference, Councilmember Manley and I were at a conference this last week, and someone actually asked a question directly related to SB 9, and the executive director of Cal Cities, Caroline Coleman, was giving a presentation addressing questions, and she was like, yeah, this is basically an assault on local control. Is what it is. This, you know, it's an assault on local control, the state wanting to mandate a top-down sort of approach instead of the cities having autonomy for themselves. And so the state is really setting the goals and saying, okay, cities, now you do it, you know, instead of the other way, right? No, instead of us setting the goals and the state helping us out, it's the opposite.
They have a habit of assuming that one size fits all.
Yeah.
And that's
I think
not the way it
I just
is.
want to add one comment. One of the reasons why we think we were defeated is because it was proposed as a law that would provide more housing. Everyone knows there's a housing shortage, and it was proposed as such, but it wasn't that. And so many cities fought it. We lost.
All right, can I get a motion? Public hearing. I already closed it to the public. Huh?
Were there any people, members of the public?
I already offered it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
We have one. Did you have a...
She's... Yeah.
Okay.
Pardon me? Go ahead. You had a card up here and then it disappeared. Huh? No. Darlene's going to want it, though.
I wanted to say, is the city in control? I don't know, because it looks sometimes like developers are. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now can I get a motion?
Yeah, where's the order? I don't have to say. Is it this one?
No, just read it.
Where do I need to go to? Okay. I'll recommend that the City Council conduct a first reading by title only of ordinance number 388, approving zoning text amendment 22-02 project regarding accessory dwelling units, junior accessory dwelling units, urban lot splits, and housing units built in accordance with Senate Bill 9, and find the project categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to Government Code Section 65852.21J and 66411.7N, Public Resources Code Section 21080.17, and CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3 and 15282H.
Get a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Even though you don't want it. Okay. we'll
So
move right
that
on.
ordinance, excuse me, Mayor, that ordinance will come back on your consent calendar at the next city council meeting for second reading and adoption.
Yes, thank you. Business items. Number 12, who's going to just explain that?
That'll be
Darlene?
Darlene.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Annually, the SCAG holds their General Assembly in May, and so this item is the selection of a voting delegate and an alternate voting delegate for that assembly. SCAG has asked us to put this on our agenda to take care of that. I do not know which members of council might be going yet this year, but whoever you would choose as the voting delegate, I am happy to hear.
Okay. And we have a card on this, so Ms. Delaney, you want to come up and speak?
I just want to thank whoever attends for attending the General Assembly for SCAG. Whomever is appointed, the voting delegate and the alternate delegate, may I please meet with you before the SCAG General Assembly, May 4th and 5th, to convey to you a very important policy matter, a region in crisis. The warehousing of our towns that will have effects on all the residents of our city now and for decades to come, and also the residents who will come to live here. You are our representatives. You are the stopgap for those coming from other counties asking for entitlements that will ultimately harm the health, wealth, and morale for your constituents now and in the future. As residents, we deserve more than a roof over our heads and money for food on our table. We deserve a healthy, wealthy, vibrant community with city representatives that work together with us to promote and serve we the people. You're we the people. We're we the people. It's time we work together to take care of everyone in Calimesa, not developers from other counties or those who would move after they receive entitlements. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, my understanding is Councilmember Molina is interested in being our delegate. I would make a motion accordingly.
We need an alternate also. I don't know who else is going to go. Are you going to go, John, or are you?
Is the alternate need to attend, or is it in case of, okay, well, John, yeah.
Well,
I would
usually,
know.
that both of them go.
Yeah.
And then if one of them gets sick or whatever, the other one can take their
By all
place.
means, I'll move that we appoint Councilmember Molina as our delegate and Councilmember Manley as our alternate.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
before we move on, I have a couple of public comments that I received by email.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I failed to read those earlier. Can I do that now?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry about that. So this first one is from Emily Torrance. I am unable to attend tonight's meeting, so I do apologize. My family and I have lived in Calimesa for 19 years next month and have never had the current issue we have been dealt with here. The uncontrollable pickup trucks performing donuts in the dirt field multiple times daily. This includes dirt kicked up in the air to the point the driver is unable to see clearly to exit the open field. They end up having to completely stop to be able to see where they need to exit. They're talking about the field behind Stater Brothers, the old one. No, the old one.
Oh, really?
Off of Fifth, behind it at Fifth Street. They end up racing out onto the road to avoid a cop arriving. This is not a weekend-only occurrence, and yet now a daily occurrence. Area and reference: open dirt field between Stater Brothers and Deseret Industries. Vehicles: two white Toyota pickup trucks and 2 red Ford Rangers. And she's given a video, but we can't show that video at this point in time. There used to be parking pavers that semi-blocked the opening, but were removed when Staters began their store remodel early 2022. We have very patiently reached out to the Staters manager with no response throughout 9 months ago. We have reached out to Staters Corporation with the result of them looking into it throughout 7 months ago. We have also reached out to Calimesa Code Enforcement approximately 3 weeks ago. Last we heard, Stater Brothers is waiting on bids, though no solutions. There needs to be a temporary solution, as this is completely out of control. Cops can never make it in time to catch the drivers. Children and pedestrians are at risk on Fifth Street with cars racing out. Uncontrollable dirt causes the neighborhood unable to open windows or have clean cars. Over the weekend, we witnessed neighbors now yelling at the trucks and chasing them down. This has gone on too long, and something needs to be put in temporary place immediately. The direction this is going doesn't look good with so many frustrated neighbors. I trust the City Council will handle this situation, as I have left the city as a last resort to respect business owners. I have been left without any choice but to contact Calimesa City Council. Thank you, Emily Torrance. And I have one more that came in. This is from an Ann Atkinson. We cannot attend tonight's 2/6/2023 meeting regarding warehouse and future developments. Our infrastructure just is not in order for any more buildings in this area. Our streets and roads are horrible. At times, traffic is horrible. In the event of an earthquake or other great emergency, we certainly aren't prepared to evacuate and take care of our people. We are trying to cram every inch of space with some kind of building project. We need more green space. We need more water storage. We need all of our roads and streets addressed at least every 5 years. We need our roads and streets repaired, and many are concerned about air quality. Please consider a building moratorium until the above concerns are addressed. And those are the last 2 comments I have.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, where was I? Okay, we were just approving that. That's done. So let's move on to 12. We have our finance, very illustrious finance person, and tell us how we're doing.
Thank you. Is my microphone on? We're good? Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, and all the members of the public. Thank you all for being here. It is my pleasure to present to you tonight the mid-year budget review for the fiscal year 22-23 year. We'll be focusing on the general fund, and throughout the course of the slides and presentation, I'll be talking about the analysis of revenues and expenditures, and we'll be taking a deeper dive into one-time revenues versus ongoing revenues to ensure that we're meeting our operating results. So we're going to start with the results of fiscal year 21-22. Our actual results, we started with a beginning fund balance of $7.2 million. It was quite a year for the city of Calimesa. We had revenue of $9.2 million, expenditures of $7.4 with a net profit of $1.7 million. I've prepared for you to the right projected actuals that were provided back in, that were estimated in May as the budget was being approved for this fiscal year. And I wanted to show that we did have some differences in our projections. We had $400,000 more in revenue than we had projected. That's consistent with Calimesa's philosophy to budget conservatively. You never want to overreach on your revenues, so I wasn't surprised to see the revenues pick up and be a little higher than we had expected. Expenditures, we did have expenditure savings of about $950,000, but it's important to note that about $387,000 of these expenditures were carried over into this fiscal year. They're a result of one-time expenditures and special projects and equipment that we had budgeted for as of June 30th, 2022, but like all other businesses, and I know everybody's experiencing when City of Calimesa attempts to conduct business transactions, sometimes we're getting held out 3, 6 months, sometimes even a year before we can actually acquire our goods and services. So there's a compilation of, I'll provide a slide of the $387,000. So we ended the year with the fund balance of $8.99 million, which is very, very close to $9 million. I do believe this is the highest fund balance the city has ever had. $489 more. I don't know, like, could have been a little closer. So I'm going to talk about some general fund revenue changes that we have from our original budget projections. I'm going to talk about them just a little bit in summary here before you look at a litany of a bunch of numbers on a page, because I wanted to highlight a few things. The significant revenue changes that we had, let me move ahead, were property and sales taxes. These are in excess of our budgeted projections of about $251,000. This is exactly where we like to see growth in revenue, because these are steady, consistent, ongoing revenues, and once they hit a certain point, they usually are routine and we can count on them for future. So it's a nice uptick, and it's a reflection of the development of the community and the good decisions that have been made in the past. We also have intergovernmental vehicle license fees. When we pay our property taxes, when we pay our registration fees for our vehicles, those get paid to the state, and then the state returns to municipalities a portion. So we have an uptick of about $76,000 in what we had originally budgeted. And then we have a revenue stream for our fire area ladder truck development agreement. I'll have a whole slide dedicated to the fire truck because it's such an important expenditure this year. But that was actually already approved in August of 22 by the City Council. We are in possession of the $1.6 million. It has been paid, and this is now the revenue recognition of that. When the resolution was originally prepared, the fiscal impact statement indicated that the budget adjustments would be prepared at mid-year. So here we are, and that's what we're doing. We also have charges for services and licenses and permits of about $860,000. These these revenue increases are primarily one-time in nature. They're revenues that are coming in. We have a recycling deposit revenue recognition that was rather large. We have some planning fees and engineering fees that have been coming in for larger projects, so it's considered to be one-time in nature. So you can see on the slide, there's quite a bit of numbers here, but I'll draw your lines where they need to be. We have the amended budget. At the bottom, we have $8.9 million. We're requesting that the budget be revised to $11.799 million. And to the right, you see the recommended adjustments. There's the $251,000 I talked about with respect to the taxes. There's $77,000 of intergovernmental revenues. And then under charges for services, we have the $1.6 million. So overall, we have an increase to our projected revenue of $2.8 million being requested with this mid-year budget. Oops. There we go. This is one of the, it's a little bit of an information slide because I wanted everybody to see categorically. We're asking for an increase of $2.8 million, but this comes back to what I was talking about, that we have about $350,000 of recurring ongoing revenues that we can expect to see, and the $2.5 million are one-time revenues that have come in, the largest piece being the $1.6 million for the fire truck and the other revenues that I mentioned before. But these are one-time revenues and revenues that we cannot expect to receive year after year. So we spend a lot of time being very careful and cognizant that we're meeting our operating objectives and that we're always analyzing one-time revenues against one-time expenditures so we don't get out ahead of ourselves expending dollars that we don't have or can't routinely count on. Next, I want to talk about the general fund expenditures. I'm also going to highlight some significant one-time expenditures. Fire aerial ladder truck of $2.2 million. That has been funded through developer agreements and development impact fees. The city manager transition and compensated absence structure, this was approved by council in November of '22. These expenditures are largely one-time in nature because they are considered temporary and not ongoing. With respect to the compensated absences, the City Council has directed, and there has been a set aside and a reserve of funding in anticipation of this. So while the estimate is about $208,000 for compensated absence distributions this year, $160,000 has been accumulating in reserves for several years now because it was anticipated this was going to happen. We also have professional service increases of about $353,000, and these are in relation to the one-time revenues that come in. When you have the one-time revenues, there's corresponding expenditures that need to be made to be met to satisfy the respective services that have been paid for. So here's the fire aerial ladder truck. This is a very significant event for the city of Calimesa, a very significant transaction that was negotiated with some of our developers. So we have the development agreement with the Oak Valley Commerce Center of the $1.6 million that's identified as being received in fiscal year '22. We have the developer agreement with Oak Valley Town Center expected of $450,000. This is written into an agreement, and it is anticipated, the timing hook is established such that it's at first occupancy. So while we will be receiving it, we can't specifically identify which year. And then we have about $85,000 in diff fees that are coming through. And again, these may be paid this year, but perhaps not until next fiscal year, but this is a reflection of the funding of the purchase of the fire aerial ladder truck of $2.2 million. I also wanted to share with respect to the ladder truck, it is fully outfitted. This $2.2 million is an all-in cost, so it includes the apparatus, includes every bit of equipment, and includes a small training budget for the team once we acquire it.
And I want to just add, this is kind of one of those examples of one of the things that we try to do to require development to kind of pay their own way. We haven't really required, the infrastructure or the buildings that we have in the city have not required this type of apparatus up to this point, but the new building that with the development, with these warehouses at Oak Valley Town Center, those require that type of apparatus. So as part of that negotiation, we required them to purchase that on behalf of the city. Obviously, it's something that can serve the entire city, but this was kind of one of those non-starters that this had to be paid for by the developer in order for this project to go forward.
Thank you. So moving on, as I promised, I know you wanted to see more charts, so here we go, more numbers. Here's the $387,000 that I referenced. If you recall, we had $948,000 savings last fiscal year, but I had said, well, $387,000 was carried over. So this is a brief description and a quick highlight of the decisions that the council made last fiscal year for budget, but that just simply weren't completed as of June 30th. We were midway through our new city manager search. We had some software. We have equipment streaming. We had our advanced life support transition and some equipment associated with that. We have traffic signals and our city hall expansion and some big landscaping projects, other maintenance, and the state of the city. I also wanted to mention that we did have a little bit of carryover revenue to offset this of about $57,000, and these are primarily grants that are provided to help fund some of these one-time expenditures that our city staff has worked diligently on and planned for to help offset and defray expenditures. Oops, there we go. So this schedule, I'm sorry, it had to be done. It's there's just a lot of numbers here, but again, I'll just bring out the highlights here. We have an amended budget of $2.84 million at this time. We're requesting revised estimates of $13.2 million. And you can see to the far right column, we don't have a lot of recommended adjustments. Most of them have either been discussed or our city council has already made the determination about. So we have the city manager. This is approximately $406,000. I believe 380,000 of it is primarily the one-time expenditures for the compensated absences and the executive advisor position for transition for the city manager. We have 352,000. These are the professional services in relation to the one-time collections of the fees that we received. And we have the $2.2 million fire truck. We also attempted to distinguish and carve out some of the significant capital projects that we've done. So for instance, we have the fire department, we have a major concrete replacement plan that's affiliated and adjacent to their building. It's attached to the fire department, but I think it's very important to know and understand that this is a citywide replacement that needs to be done. It belongs to the collective of the city hall. It just happens to be adjacent to the fire department, so we decided to carve that out in this schedule, if you're going to look at it in the future. Okay, so in summary, I've been throwing out a lot of numbers. So if the city council were to approve of the recommended changes, I wanted to highlight and share what the year actually looks like. So we have our beginning fund balance of 8.9 million, the revenue of 11.7, expenditures of 13.5 with a net loss of 1.4 million. As to relatively understand where we were before these decisions were made, you can see we have the amended budget and the difference of the revenue. There's our 2.8 million in revenue, the 2.9 million in expenditures. So it's an overall draw on fund balance of about 92,000. But if you recall, we are anticipating 450,000 to come through in future years, 85,000 to come through. So that would effectively be a wash and help mitigate the 92,000. It's just a matter of timing. So we have fund balance reserved of 3.4 million and fund balance unreserved of 4.9 million, and this is in accordance with the city's fiscal policy of having a reserve fund balance of 35%. It is on the high side, but because we have a lower annual operating budget, it's necessary to ensure that the city has sufficient reserves on hand to manage any potential problems that come. We always say our next door neighbors, if we have to replace streets, our next door neighbors, it costs the same as it does in Calimesa. So we have a higher reserve percentage because of that. So it's just another consistent method of applying conservative fiscal policy within the city of Calimesa. And this schedule, this is actually quite a schedule, and this is what I had referenced before, that at the finance level and city manager and with our team, we're always tracking and trying to understand where are we at with respect to our one-time expenditures versus our operations. So big picture, we have a net loss this year of 1.4 million, and I thought we need to track and show how we get to our net operating results. Well, you can see once we extract out all of the one-time activity, we have rollovers that are happening, we have grants that are coming in, we have money that's coming in future years. We extract all that out and bring it back to bare bones, which are our operations, which normally covers like utilities and salaries and routine maintenance and paper supplies and things of that nature. When you extract everything out, the city actually is operating on a operating surplus of 731,000. So we have a negative 1.4 million. We have to back out the one-time revenue. We have to back out our budgetary carryovers. We're backing out one-time expenditures that we agreed to back in June of 22 for this year. I'm sure this number is going to be very familiar to the council members, 1.421 million. Mentioned it quite a bit. So there is our pavement management program, the finance department cost allocation user fee study that the city council recently approved. Finance department, there's a concrete replacement, the SCBA replacement. That's a mandated equipment replacement that we had to do for our fire department. That's approximately $165,000, and there's some additional equipment attached to that of $11,000. Public works, we have to level our buildings. We have to have the city hall roof replaced. That was 1.4 million. And then the other ones, the other one-time adjustments are the ones that I've been talking through this evening. We have the fire aerial ladder truck of 2.2 million. The city manager transition and professional services. So again, if we move out all of the one-time activity, we have a net operating surplus of 731,000 this year. And I didn't include it in the slide, but if you almost look at the 2 years combined, last year we had a net profit of 1.7 million. This year we have a loss of 1.4 million. Combined, the net of the 2 years is about $300,000. And a lot of these decisions are based on some of the reserve funding that's been set aside. The council spent many years accumulating reserves, acting in a very conservative philosophy and putting money aside. And it was just this year in 2023 that the council decided to release the $1 million for the pavement management program to help complement the ARPA fund to improve the streets of the city of Calimesa. So that concludes the general fund. Do you all have any questions about the general fund you'd like to talk about?
Thoroughly confused, or do you got any?
Oh, no. I have not done my job if you're confused.
Well, you did a very good job.
Thank you. Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you. We have...
I like to read, but I can't add and subtract, so I do have a rough idea what's going on.
Okay, I'm sure you do, Mayor. So we have other funds. I just wanted to just highlight this because we do have other funds. I spent a lot of time on the general fund, but those are the discretionary dollars. The other funds are funds that are mandated and have to be spent in specified ways. I don't want to spend too much time on this. They're not necessarily significant changes. We have our road maintenance and gas tax fund. Those revenues went down. Our Measure A revenues are going up. Our traffic improvement funds, a lot of these projects have been carried over for several years, so we fine-tuned that budget a little bit. That resulted in a net increase to our fund balance. And then we have the CFD funds. These have a little bit of an increase this year. Typically at mid-year budget, that's not the time where you see new items being added per se, but there's a special project that needs to be managed at JP Rants, a slope project that our landscape architect has recommended that we get started with sooner rather than later. So it's a little high, but we have been accumulating fund balance to pay for that. So that's adjustment has been recommended by staff. And now, I think you all have heard enough from me. I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, and he's going to share with us some highlights for fiscal year 22-23.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Celeste. So I just wanted to share a couple of highlights. We have a lot of things going on. That's one of the things I've discovered quickly about this city is that, especially for a budget our size, we still have a lot of projects that we're investing in the community. A lot of them are listed here. The City Hall expansion project was recently completed. That was a big one because we are running out of space for staff in our current City Hall complex. And as we grow, and as we're processing more things, that size becomes, or that space becomes important. So that was a big addition for us. The speed and message radar trailer, that's going to allow us to place that into strategic locations to be able to have those feedback signs. So in places where we're getting a lot of complaints for speeding, we can put that sign, that trailer out there. And that actually does a lot to deter people, for at least slows them down, because they see what their speed is, and it's kind of one of those things where, if you embarrass them enough, they'll maybe slow down a little bit. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As you're probably watching this program right now at home, you know that we did our IT streaming, that was completed. So that's something you're seeing probably right now. The aerial ladder truck, we've talked about that. We're transitioning to advanced life support in the fire department. We also got funding for vehicle extraction equipment that we desperately needed for our fire department. We approved the pavement management plan last month for $2.4 million. That included that contract, but it also included about $180,000 expenditure for paving done on Buena Mesa that was done for us by YVWD. So that was important. We're also on transportation. We have the County Line Road project ongoing. We have a new city library that we're currently designing, so we're really excited about that project. And a couple of things that aren't on here is that we are working closely with Caltrans and the county on all of our interchanges. So all of our interchanges, as you know, are in their original state from when I-10 was built in the 1960s. They're well overdue for improvements, but it's not for lack of effort on our part at the city level to get those projects done. And so each interchange is at some stage of the process with Caltrans. It's frustrating at times. It takes a long time, but we're trying to get through it and get those improvements made. So we're really excited about all the things that are happening and the things that we expect to have come forward with fiscal year 24. And so we have started the fiscal year 24 budget process internally, and we will be bringing back more information on that in the near future. That concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
No questions?
Thank you, Celeste.
Okay, thank you.
You. Want to get a motion here?
Yes, sir.
I'll go ahead and move it. That the city council approve resolution number 2023-09, a resolution of the city council of the city of Calimesa, amending the fiscal year 2022-23 budget to include recommended adjustments as provided for in attachments A through E.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Council members, comments and reports. John, do you have anything to say?
Yes, just real quickly, I was going to cover some training that I went to on February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I attended the League of California Cities training for council members, so it's a council member academy. So it's 3 days, so it's a pretty comprehensive training, so we covered a lot of different topics, a lot of good speakers, budgeting, legal updates, planning development. There's about 350 attendees, most of those being council members from all over the state. I think some of the biggest takeaway for me, I think most relevant for the community members is, so we are a member of this organization, as almost every single city is, which is close to 500 cities in the state. So one thing that the organization does is they have policy committees, and that's made up of council members from all these different cities. So they go and work on these policy committees to try to take a position on policies, and then they lobby for us in Sacramento. So I think it's important for, as we've seen with SB 9 tonight, to be able for these local cities to get together, and then they can kind of lobby for us in Sacramento to try to protect some of our local rights. So they're doing a little bit of that, so that's helpful. And that concludes my report.
Yes, the 20th of the month I attended the Crafton College Fire Academy groundbreaking ceremony, which is a great career path for our youth up at Crafton College. It was well attended by our city, and it's just a great thing that's going to be, I think the first graduating class is 24, the first graduating class, so fantastic for our community to have that career path. I also attended the annual Vet Expo in Beaumont, representing Calimesa, and then I was there also as a line in the Breakfast Club here, and we cooked over 300 hot dogs, and we will be putting on a Memorial Day event in May here at the Desert Lawn Cemetery. Also attended on the 26th the Calimesa Chamber Installation Dinner and Community Awards, where we honored our outgoing city manager, Bonnie Johnson, and honored Captain Vega with the fire department and Sergeant Juan Cedeno with our sheriff's department. Those were our awards that we celebrated, and it was a fun night for everybody. And then also attended a policy meeting. I sit on a policy committee for the Cal City's Transportation, Communication, and Public Works, and bring that information back to our city. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, so I attended some of the things already mentioned. The chamber dinner was what a wonderful event to celebrate some of the businesses and important individuals in our community. Attended the Crafton event as well. That was great. Senator Rosalicia Ochoa-Bo gave the keynote address dedicating the building and talking about, or excuse me, the groundbreaking event, and talking about its importance for our region and the college in particular. But our fire chief was there, city manager was there, a couple of us council members were there to celebrate this important event. I also attended the council member academy as well with Councilmember Manley. So I won't go into, he did a great job summarizing the important things of that event. I think an important thing besides the education, and as an educator, I mean, it was great. It was like going to college. It was great to learn and just to be in that academic environment. But it was the highlight for me was getting to meet some council members from our region, from Beaumont and Banning, and develop some relationships there, because those are important for our region to get to work together. Historically, I mean, I know some of our council member staff can vouch for this, there's been some, to put it mildly, animosity between these cities, and Calimesa can get pushed around a little bit. So we're like the little kid on the block. So to build some relationships and stand up for ourselves, and when it comes to regional policy decisions and is important. And so I got the sense there's some new council members in some surrounding cities that they're wanting to work together and play nice. And so I'm really anticipating a new season in our relationship with our neighboring cities. So looking forward to that. That's all I have to say, Mayor.
Oh, I had the misfortune of going to breakfast with our new supervisor and with our city manager and meeting him, and so it's going to be a time of adjustment. So the scorecard is still out there playing. So yeah, we'll see what happens and everything else, and we meet once a month with the pass area mayors and city managers to discuss different things who we're having problems with, or how can we work together. And we're trying, and I've been fighting with them for years, trying to get them to talk to each other instead of hating each other. So life's too short to be hating people. So we'll see what happens. You got anything to say, Will?
Nothing to add, sir.
Okay. I want to thank you all for attending this meeting, and I really appreciate people showing up here, believe it or not. And I might have sounded angry at that. I sound angry all the time. So that's just a fact of life with me. But all these people here are spending their time. They aren't spending their time to listen to you clap. And that's why, it just adds that much longer time to a meeting. And I'm not a late night person. And I don't, at 7:42, so we got done quicker than I thought we would tonight. So, but we still have closed session to go to. So what do you got to say?
Thank you, Mayor. There is a closed session tonight pursuant to Government Code Section 549-56.9A. The City Council will now go into closed session to discuss a piece of existing litigation, City of Calimesa versus the estate of Troyce Lee Gale, and it's an eminent domain action.
Okay.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes.
Yeah. Good to see you all here.
I'll tell you about